Hey guys, welcome. Happy Sunday to everybody. Hope that you're having a good Sunday, relaxing and chilling, enjoying the good life. Welcome to another episode of Expanding the Conversation with Kofi and Richard. This morning, Kofi and I were actually chatting this morning about something else. Um, and of course, we generally just pick these topics at random just before we hop on because
Yeah.
we're maybe disorganized or just brilliant like that. Either way. But we were talking about something this morning, and the idea of and we've discussed this many times before, right, Kofi? Where maybe as a natural progression to where we are at this stage of our lives, when is a good time to lead, or how do we know that we're ready to lead? How do we even know that we're meant to lead, right? Because we all have these conversations going on in our head. Sometimes we don't share them with people, which is okay. Sometimes we have a back and forth conversation with ourselves, and we struggle. A lot of us struggle with how do I know that I'm ready to take on a leadership role, to lead in some way, shape, or form. And how do we know when that timing is right? I know some people, some of our friends especially, timing is the key. When is the right time to do certain things, and I certainly believe that there may be some truth there depending on how you dissect it. But how do you know when it's time to lead? How do you know it's your time to lead, and how do you sort of get over the fear that you're not ready, or you're not ready to lead in any specific area? And since Kofi is my best leadership friend that I followed, but I've been blessed, to be honest, in a lot of ways, with having lots of people surrounding me that are leaders in their own realm and are great leaders and good examples that inspires me to lead and to be a better leader, but also just to take on the role to begin with. So yeah, we're gonna try to dissect this conversation today about how do we know it's time to lead? How do we know that we're supposed to lead? And how do we get over the fears that we're not ready to lead? So teach us, Kofi.
So Rich, thanks. Welcome, everybody. Um, I think maybe it's good to start with putting it in context, good context, because I think that every day, all of us are called to leadership in some way or the other, right? So, whether it's in our family and whether it's in school, whether it's in our community, and just in our own lives, we can take measures to lead, meaning that um, we want to we want things to be better, we want things to improve, and we want to do things, and I'll put in quotes, right, we want to do the right thing. So I think even if we have parents who are listening and children who might be listening to us, doing the right thing is leadership, right? Even when people aren't looking. And so when we convince ourselves of this fundamental principle of we want to make things better and we want to do the right thing, um, not just for our good but for the sake of others, I think we're leading. And in that context, I think everyone is called to leadership to demonstrate, our sort of commitment to doing what is right and doing what is good for humanity and for people, for our neighbor and for our friends. So when you think of that in that very general context, I think everybody is called to lead and everybody should be leading. Calling out things when we see that they are not desirable, when we see injustice in the world, when we see children taken advantage of, when we see women taken advantage of, or people exploited. I think in that natural sense, we are called to lead, right? So I want to put in that context as well. So if there's anybody out there who doubts that you're a leader, right, just look around and do the right thing, and you're leading, right? And if you're not, then you need to think about why, right? Why you're not leading. So, and that could be, Richard, we talk about driving, on the road, or we talk about so many things, right, that come in our everyday lives, right, in society. So we want to lead. Good. So I think having covered that, we want to raise the bar a little bit, right? To talk about rising up to leadership now, rising to to higher forms of leadership, higher levels of leadership. And so this is where I think a lot of people might struggle with the question that you pose about whether they are qualified, right? Because hopefully no one is questioning whether they are qualified to do the right thing, right? Hopefully no one's questioning whether they have the ability to make a difference. And maybe this is a question for some people, by doing what is right and pursuing what is good in society for the benefit of others. So hopefully that's not a big question for people. But I think this question that you raised come up comes up a lot of times when, for example, you're offered a leadership role, whether in an organization or at your job or somewhere else, or in a class you're studying, or you have a group assignment, or you remember those days, right? And so you got to do things together, and somebody's got to be the leader, right? And now you've got people looking to you, and the burden of that responsibility, sometimes you feel it, right? Yeah, but sometimes you feel it and you shy away from it. And I think that is where, as you said, people might shy away. How do you know that you're the person to lead? Um, and that's a good question, Rich, because I can only share my own experience. And for me, um, there are certain things I think about. The first thing I think about is, how do I know I'm the person to lead? Well, the first question I ask myself is, am I in the room, right? If I'm in the room, then I'm likely qualified to lead, because sometimes we can look for a leader, and we're always looking outside the room, right? Outside the country, and bring somebody, some savior is gonna come to our side. But said, no, 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 no. If you're in that room, you are a potential leader. And so the mere fact that you are there, right, to me says that at least there's a potential here, that I'm in this room, I likely can be the leader, right? I got into that room somehow. So if you went to college, for example, you're in college and you're in the room, you got to realize that there was something that brought you to that moment, right? Something brought you there, right? Which is like if you're thinking, if you're leading in a university setting, if you're in your class, it might be your first class in your group assignment. You have to realize that there were a series of steps that brought you there, because there's somebody who's not in that class, who is not there, right? And don't qualify to lead there. You see? So the mere fact that you are in the room, I think, is the first sort of convincing step that you belong there, and that you likely qualify to be the leader in that room. So that's the first thing. That's one of the first things I go on. It's like, if I'm in a place and something brought me to that place, I feel like I have a good justification for saying, I think I can stand up and lead because I'm here. There are other people who are not here, right? Sometimes when you look around the room, it's just three of you. Sometimes it's just you. And if it's just you, it's leadership by default. You're the guy,
Instant
right?
promotion.
Right, yeah, exactly. By the process of elimination, right? You are the guy or the gal, right? Depending how you look at that. But I think being in a room, first we've got to recognize that we got there somehow. There's a process that led us to that place, and if we are in that place, then I think that's the first qualification, that I'm in that room, I'm present. All right. So for me, that's one. And two, I think we have to understand the alignment of our own personal goals in terms of what we want to achieve with what that leadership opportunity might bring as well. So a lot of times, and you and I talked about this, sometimes there are things that we want to do, and sometimes there are things that organizations want to achieve. And when those goals align, there's probably a good chance that that is your opportunity to lead, right? That that's really a good chance that my goal, I'm in the room first, and you got to get in the room. You got to be in the picture, right? You got to be there first, or else you can't lead. And then once you're in, if your personal goals align with whether it's the organization or a group or whatever. Once you sense that alignment, sometimes the feeling of that alignment, right? Sometimes the feeling of that alignment it feels very strong at times. Like you look at the group and you go, you know what, I can get with this because this is something I wanted to do. This is something I'm passionate about, and this is something that this organization is passionate about. And the alignment of goals, the alignment of mission, right, is a good indication that you are probably the person to lead it, right? You have to remember, two people. There's a scripture that says two cannot walk together unless they agree, and the idea here is you take two oxen, right, and you put them together and you yoke them together. And there's another scripture that says, "Don't become unequally yoked," right? Because the idea is once you yoke up, you want to make sure that your goals in terms of where you want to go aligns with where others want to go, and you can lead them along that way. And if there's differences of alignment, then there's pulling in different directions, right, Rich? And that's where the unequally yoked idea comes from, because you end up breaking each other neck, right? And so and so you want to make sure that you are aligning your personal goals, I think, with the goals of organizations, institutions, countries, communities, and it allows you to become, I think, it means it's calling to you, right? It means that that mission is calling out to you and drawing you. That's all I say for now, right? Let's get the context. But rising up is you're in the room and you feel a strong pull of your personal mission to the mission of the leadership. I know you're a leader too, Red. So don't sit back and pretend like you're not, man. I know you are.
No, I think I mentioned to you before, when I was younger, there are a couple of things that always kept me sort of trying to get to the next level. One was, I recognized that the people at the top are the ones making big decisions. And I also recognize that in a lot of cases we have leaders in positions that aren't necessarily good leaders. And they got there maybe because, as you said, they were in the room. So,
But yeah, but if
but
nobody
I
else is
think
there, what do you do?
what
Go
right.
ahead.
So we've got. I agree with you. We've got to get in the room for sure. And I think one of the key things that you mentioned there that sort of hits home for me is that in a lot of ways, all the things that you've done before, and the experiences that you've had and the journey that you've been on makes you sort of worthy of leading, right? It's almost like life has
Correct.
brought you this moment. You end up in the room and there's a call for leadership, and you feel like there's an alignment, um, with that calling, right? Then you take it on. You stand up and you take on that role as a leader. Um, but also I think there is what I've found, in a lot of cases as well, is that all those things can happen, right? You've gone through the journey of life, you've learned the lessons, you end up in the room, and there's an opportunity to lead, and you just take a step back, right? I think what I've come to appreciate as well in this journey of deciding whether or not I'm capable of leading and it's my time to lead is also sometimes the voices that call you out, right? Somebody that says, "Well, I know that you've got something to offer here.
Right.
I know that you're a good person for this. I believe I know who you are and I've seen you." And sometimes I think we have to, whilst we may feel hesitant. I know we have a good friend that had a voice in his life telling him that he was ready for something, and he said no, he wasn't quite ready for it, and he's successful today. Um, but sometimes we have to learn how to trust those voices, right? Those people that see leadership in us and see leadership qualities in us, um, and nominate us for those roles even before we may feel that we're ready, because I think that that helps as well, right? And so if you're in the room and everybody agrees that you're probably the best person, then there's a good likelihood that you're the best person. But one of the things I'll say too about leadership and knowing when is the time to lead, I think in a lot of cases in life in general, right? Like we notice when we have kids, right? We feel like we're going along life. We're not totally irresponsible. before we have kids. But the moment we have kids, we shift our thinking, right? We start to think
Yeah.
differently. We've got to lay a different foundation. We've got to act. We've got to get our stuff together and be better stewards of those resources. And so it shifts, right? And I think in a lot of ways, leadership does the same thing, right? Which is we learned this even in high school, right? But you'd find that the teachers would select a couple of bad kids to make them prefects, and it makes a difference, right? They all of a sudden they used to break the rules, but now they've
Were
been
you one
given
of
the
those?
responsibility. I was a good guy. So, you're always breaking the rules, and all of a sudden you're given the responsibility to make sure that other people don't break the rules. You're left in a situation where you can step up to it and own it, or not, which then leaves you in a very tough position. But a lot of times, I think that 9 out of 10 times people step up and they level up to that position and they lead. And so I think one of the things that when you take on leadership roles, you you create an opportunity for growth, right? Because people will help you in those roles. You don't necessarily have to know everything, which is something that I struggled with when I was younger, right? Because I always assumed that to lead, I have to know everything. I've got to show up and be ready because people are looking to me for answers, and if I don't have the answers, sorry, um, if I don't have the answers, I'm just going to look like an incompetent leader. And I think
Yeah.
I've learned to embrace the idea that I could be incompetent sometimes, but not entirely, right? You can seek help, you can find the right people with the right resources. And leadership is obviously tough, right? Because as we just discussed, a lot of people shy away from it because it comes with a certain level of responsibility
Correct.
that people generally don't like. It's uncomfortable. I don't think that ever changes at any level because you're sort of held. Um, you're sort of required to take on a certain level of responsibility, but I do think that as you said, life is preparing us to lead at some point in
Correct.
our lives. We're naturally going to lead, and we're
Remember,
already getting we're already getting experiences, right,
Mike,
in our everyday life.
this comedian calls it the setup, right? He calls it the setup, where he says that our lives, I can't remember his name, right? I think it's Michael
Michael
something.
Michael Jordan Jr.
Yeah, Michael, yeah.
Yeah,
So he says, you have this, all of life is preparing you, and you never really, you don't finish it, right? You're always doing the setup, but then that sort of like switch, we never do it. We kept getting more degrees and doing more. But and Rich, this reminds me that feeling ready to lead has never really been a good indicator of whether you should lead or not. Right? The feeling of readiness has never been a good indicator of how good a leader you're going to be. As far as I know, some of the best leaders in history did not feel ready to lead. And both in what we might say in ancient time, the story sort of Moses, as a reluctant leader, right? Somebody who just didn't feel like they could lead. And so that story talks about that. You look at someone even like Martin Luther King, Jr., who, if you've read his biography and you know his story, the movement that he ultimately became the face of, it started before him, and he didn't. They sort of asked him to lead, but he was very unwilling at first. He didn't really think that he was really the man to do it, and so he came out, a great leader. So the feeling that, hey, maybe I'm not ready to lead, is not necessarily a good indication that you should or shouldn't lead. As a matter of fact, you made a really good point. If people around you and others who are willing to into your leadership commit to it, it's probably a good indication that you should be leading. Um, and in this sense, leadership is really just offering yourself in service to others. It's really what you're doing. And so it takes not just you but others who will support you and will be there with you to support that. And if you have that support, right, even if you don't feel like you're ready, maybe that's a good sense of humility. Maybe that's a good way to keep you honest and keep you going, right? Because sometimes the guy or the girl that jumps in, like, I'm ready, I'm just gonna do this, right? Nobody wants to get on that train. You know, they have nobody supporting them. Nobody on that train. And you go, yeah, I don't know. You know, they're not even in the room, right? They're just, you know, but I don't think that feeling ready, right, is has been a good indication of leadership, right? It's never really been. A lot of good leaders have led unreluctantly at first, right? Before they got into it. And so I think that that's important for us to understand, that life brought us to a certain place. And when we feel that sort of burden, that sort of call, that, you know, that alignment, I think you step up and lead. You don't doubt yourself. You step up and you go for it, right? You step up and you go for it. And when that shines through, other people will see it, right? Other people will see it, and start to follow. So I'll just offer that now. There's probably a lot more to say on this topic, Rich. I mean, a ton more, but that's what I think that for me at least is some of the ways I've thought about this.
No, that's good advice. I took some notes. But no, we need leaders, right? I think um again, when I was younger, I'd often say, man, somebody else will do that work. It's fine, right? It doesn't have to be me.
Right.
But I think we need leaders, right? Because the world, as much as we may dream of the utopia where everybody will know what they're supposed to do and do it and come together and do it at the right time. Um, that does not exist, right? I think maybe there's a quote somewhere that says that people they don't wish to not have a king. They just wish to have a kind king, right? Because they do want somebody to lead, and I think we all need leadership. Um, the world needs leaders because a lot of times, even when we're in rooms and we speak up when everybody else is quiet, we'll often look around the room and see a lot of nodding of heads, right? Which means that we're the only person that was brave enough to say everything, to say something that everybody else was thinking, because you'll see the nodding of heads, but the guy or gal that's willing to speak up is oftentimes sometimes the person that is required
Yeah.
to maybe take on that role of leadership. But the world needs leaders. We need to look out for each other, and in a lot of ways, your life is preparing you for it. So you're much more ready than you are. So let's all go out and lead in a good way. And the way I think about leadership, I'll say this in closing, is doing something that benefits more than just you, right? Certainly you
Yeah.
gain from it, but I think being able to look out for others. And we're all recipients of good leadership at this stage of our lives, right? We can all name certainly a great number of people that have led and have led us and been good
Yeah.
examples in our lives.
I,
So we,
I
we owe it to those people to pay it forward as well.
I really like that idea, right, of leadership there, Rich, because it's when you think of it like from a business perspective, um, sometimes we do things from on a subsistence level. Remember you learn in business, you do subsistence farming, and so the fruits and the vegetables are just benefiting you and the family. But when you start to produce beyond that, right, the excess that other people are able to benefit, and even when you go beyond, to sort of philanthropy, where you've got so much now that you could just give it away. That's like leadership, right? So you go beyond yourself to produce goods, not physical or tangible goods only, but you produce good that goes beyond you and benefits others around you. And that is really the idea of leadership, right? Is to escape sort of the subsistence, right, of the good that you create for yourself, but know that you've got excess good that you could create for others, and for the service and the benefit of others. I think it's a lovely view of it.
And the world becomes a better place.
It
I like
does, right?
it.
It does. Awesome,
Indeed.
man.
All right, guys. Have a great rest of the Sunday. Thanks for joining us. And I saw Cleveland has dropped some notes there.
Yeah, we
Feel
appreciate
free,
Cleveland, man. Cleveland's a big
yeah,
fan,
feel
and
free to
Cleveland's
share as
doing
well.
great things. So we're fans of Cleveland.
All right.
All
Lot,
right,
big up Cleveland.
all right.
All right,
Keep
guys.
expanding the conversation, guys.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Go be good leaders, huh?